pooped on my boyfriend's bed after I found out he was cheating on me, and I lit his car on fire. Disclaimers in my story time instead of me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I met in high school. He chased me for about 3 years. This man would tell me every single day that he was in love with me. This was before Instagram, so he would contact me every single day through Facebook. He would send me his favorite songs. He would write me poems. I mean, you can tell this guy was totally obsessed, right? After 4 years of this, I finally said yes to a date. And the only reason I kept saying no was because I knew somebody that had dated him and they told me that he was crazy. I just didn't want to believe it because he seemed so perfect over Facebook. At the time, I was living in Manhattan, so I told him that I wanted the date to be in the city. So he took me to watch a show on Broadway. First off, I was really impressed that he could even afford the tickets because they were to a very expensive show. And before the show, he took me to a really nice dinner. And he proceeded to order everything on the menu. 5 appetizers, 4 main entrees, and a bunch of drinks. The bill came out to about $600. I offered to help him pay, but he said no, as he should. The entire date was really amazing. The only thing that I know now was a red flag is that he was kind of rude to the waiter. Of course, I didn't mention it. Fast forward a few months and he asked me to be his girlfriend. Now, to be honest, I was dating a few other guys at the time and they were all really great, but none of them wanted a serious relationship and that's what I was looking for. So I finally said yes to my ex. Around that time, I started competing in pageants and I got very far. I went to Miss USA. Can you guess who I am? He loved this. Part 2 is up. I pooped on my boyfriend's bed after I found out he was cheating on me and lit his car on fire. Disclaimers in my story time was sent on my Instagram. After he asked me to be his girlfriend, I decided to start competing in pageants. And I got pretty far. I won my state and went on to Miss USA. At that point, my ex and I had been together for about a year. To my face, he always told me that he was so proud of me. He loved that I was so dedicated and disciplined. To get ready to compete, I would work out twice a day. I also had a bunch of classes and held down a full-time job. Here's when things start getting complicated. One night, our friends had a get-together at their house. Our entire friend group were there and I invited my best friend. Now, my best friend has always had my back. He is my ride or die. Her and I went to the kitchen to get some drinks, and when she went back to where my boyfriend was standing, she overheard the conversation he was having with another friend. Apparently, my boyfriend was telling the other friend that I was crazy, that he thought I had eating disorders because I would work out so much, and that I thought I was better than everybody else because I was competing for Miss USA. My best friend ran over to the kitchen to tell me everything she heard. At first, I thought, are you sure he wasn't joking? She said no, he was completely serious. I was really hurt. Instead of waiting for the party to be over, I confronted him right then and there. Asked him if he was talking bad about me, and then he said no, of course not. And I told him the whole conversation that my best friend overheard. But I told him that I was the one that overheard the conversation. That's when he started gaslighting me. He said that I was overreacting, that I had completely twisted his words. I asked him exactly what he said, and he told me he couldn't remember. I asked him point blank if he felt envious of me, and he said no. He said, you have to get over yourself if you think you're that important. Part 3 is I pooped on my boyfriend's bed after I found out he was cheating on me and lit his car on fire. Disclaimers is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. After I caught him talking bad about me, he denied everything. And he also told me that I needed to get over myself. I grabbed my best friend and went home. That means my boyfriend stayed at the party by himself. Well, guess what he does? He goes out of his way to find a girl to hook up with. And I know this now because a few of my friends who were at the party saw everything go down. Apparently, after I left, he started scouting all the girls. He would go up to each one of them and talk to them. Finally, he went upstairs with one of them. I mean, he couldn't even go somewhere else. He had to do it in front of all of our friends. Multiple people watched this all happen, and most of them knew that we had gotten into a fight before. One of the girls that was at the party actually messaged me and told me that my boyfriend was in the bedroom with another girl. So I ran back to the party. He was already downstairs at that point, but I asked him if it was true. At this point, he had a lot to drink. That's when he starts word vomiting, telling me that he had hooked up with girls that were way better than I was, and that I was so consumed with my pageant competition and that I was too skinny. Then he just started listing all of the girls that he had slept with, and 2 of them were my friends who were at the party. What I did next is probably not the best idea, but I did it. I grabbed a bottle of alcohol and went outside with the lighter. I poured it all over his car and set it on fire. Then I got back into my car with my best friend and went to his apartment. And it just so happens that I needed to poop at the time, so I thought just to do it in his bed. So I squatted over his bed and did my business. Then he messaged me telling me that he was going to press charges on me for his car. Luckily, nobody told on me, so he had 0 proof. And luckily, his car was fine. A few months later, he messaged me apologizing. He said that I was the best thing that ever happened to him, but I ignored his messages. No, I didn't win Miss USA, but I'm proud of myself for what I did to him. Bye.
Story time on how I caught both of my best friends cheating on me with my boyfriend. Yes, both of them. So at the time, I was entering college, and one of my best friends went to the same school as me. My other best friend went to the same school as my boyfriend. And our schools were close. We were only like 10 minutes away from each other. Homecoming is when things started to get fishy. I asked my boyfriend if he wanted to come out to our homecoming games, and he said that he was busy. Then, of course, I asked my best friend, but she said she had cheerleading practices because she was trying to become a cheerleader. I don't know, they just always seem busy doing something around the same time. So then the holiday comes up and I visit my boyfriend's family for Christmas. I don't know, something in me just told me to look at his phone. And he was talking to my best friend, the one he went to school with. And the conversation was just too flirty. So I talked to my other best friend about it that I went to the same school with. And she was like, oh, I always knew something was weird about them too. I, of course, confronted my boyfriend about it, and he said nothing was going on. So I decided to play reverse psychology on my best friend. Come back for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with 2 of my best friends. Like I said, I confronted my boyfriend about it, and he pretended there was nothing going wrong. So I went to my best friend about it, and I kind of did like a reverse psychology thing on her. I told her that my boyfriend told me everything that was going on. And I was like, did y'all even use protection? Not really knowing what's really going on. And she was like, I'm sorry, it was only a one-time thing. And that she was just drunk one night. And I was like, sis, you practically told on yourself because I was joking. And then she kind of like snitched on my other best friend. She was like, I wasn't the only one, you know. And of course, I was like, what you mean? And she said a couple months back when we were in high school that my other best friend had slept with him also. The whole situation was just messy. I ended up cutting off my whole circle. And later on that freshman year, my ex-boyfriend started dating my ex-best friend. This is why you should never catch rides with strangers. So last year in June, one of my closest friends had a graduation party. She lived in New York, so I had to get a cab service to drive me to the party. By the way, I'm from Jersey. I think I paid like $150, but she had told me not to worry about the drive back and that she would drive me back. And plus, she was going to stay over because she really wanted to see my family. Fast forward, I get to the party. I had a great time. I met some of her newer college friends, and everyone seemed pretty cool. We took shots and had hookah. It was real fun. So after the party is over, I get myself ready, and I went to my friend, expecting a ride back, but she was too drunk. One of her friends was like, spend the night and, go back home tomorrow morning. But I told her I had work and school. The only person that was willing to take me back was one of her friend's cousin, and we're going to call him John. John said he had no problem taking me back, and 2 hours was nothing. All her friends said it'd be safer that way, so I was like, okay. But it turned out to be a big mistake. Come back for part 2. Part 2 of you should never take a ride from a stranger. So, like I said, John volunteered to take me home. Everyone said it was probably best because my best friend was drunk. So I gave John my address. We get in the car and we start heading home. 30 minutes into driving, he starts falling asleep on the road. We literally almost got into an accident. He said he needed to stop and nap for a few minutes. And y'all, if I knew how to drive, I probably would have drove. But he was the only liable driver with a license. And I was kind of nervous about him falling asleep on the road, so I was kind of okay with him stopping. He fell asleep immediately. Me, on the other hand, I stayed up till my phone died, and I knocked out. A couple of minutes after sleeping, it sounded like the back door had closed, and it woke me up. I woke John up saying, we need to go. And he's like, what's going on? I told him the car back door literally slammed. He looked back and said, how? The door is locked. And I'm like, no, seriously, I heard the door slam. He was saying maybe you dreamed about it because there's no possible way this door opened. But I'm not dumb. I know what I heard. Come back for part 3.
If you are wondering whether or not to hook up with your ex-boyfriend, here is a sign not to. One day, my ex hit me up again. Let's call him Jaden. He hit me up and he asked me if I was single. I said yes. He told me that he was single too. And honestly, I missed him and he asked me to hang out one day. I was super excited to see him again and I was really looking forward to building our relationship over. He came over to my place and we talked for a bit. We watched movies, we cuddled, we kissed, and we did other stuff. The other stuff went on for hours, and I mean hours, because we had not talked to each other for 3 whole years. We broke up a really long time ago, and once we reconnected, we could not keep our hands off of each other. We cuddled and watched movies for the rest of the night, and eventually I drifted off to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night to him getting dressed, and I asked why he was leaving and where he needed to go because I really wanted him to stay the night. He says he can't miss this wedding that he's supposed to go to early in the morning, and I understood, and I asked him who was getting married and to tell them congrats. He said thanks. It's my wedding. And then he left.
It's True Crime Thursday, so let's talk about one of the worst moms in history. China Arnold was a 28-year-old mom who microwaved her 28-day-old baby. Here are the train of events that led China to microwaving her baby. August 29, 2005, China Arnold and her baby father, Terrell Talley, got into an argument in the middle of the night, allegedly. They were arguing because Terrell did not believe that he was the father of China's baby. During this argument, Terrell confessed to sleeping with a neighbor, and China was drunk during this argument, and that set her off. This angered China to the point where she put her baby in the microwave for more than 2 whole minutes. She later on said that she microwaved her baby because she was drunk and she was afraid that Terrell might find out that he wasn't the baby's father. DNA tests later on concluded that Terrell was in fact the baby's father. Later on, she took her baby to the hospital and the baby died in the hospital the next day. So the hospital got the police involved. Investigators found that the burns on the baby were very similar to a case they had worked where a baby had been microwaved. What's even more disgusting is she got witnesses to lie for her and say that they saw China's nephew put her baby in the microwave. But China's nephew had an alibi, and so they charged China and sentenced her to life in prison. Am I wrong for leaving my husband after I found out that he had cancer? So my husband and I had been married for about 10 years before we started becoming distant. A little while after, he actually cheated on me with one of my close friends. After that, nothing was ever the same between me and him. Now, don't get me wrong, I still loved him, but things could never go back to the way they used to be. Eventually, he fell sick, started losing a lot of weight, having trouble breathing, getting random rashes on his skin. So we both agreed that he should go to the hospital to get checked. So he went to the hospital and had to wait a few days to get the results. A few days had passed, so he went back to the hospital to get his results. When he came back home, I asked him what his results were. He said everything was fine, there was nothing to worry about. Then he put his keys on the counter and hopped into the shower. A couple days before, I had lost my credit card. I looked everywhere for it, couldn't find it, but the only place I didn't look was my husband's car. So I grabbed his keys while he was in the shower and I went to his car to look for my credit card. I was thinking maybe it fell out of my wallet while I was sitting in one of the seats. While I was looking for the credit card, I found a folder from the hospital he just went to. When I looked inside the folder, there was his test result. It was a biopsy test that confirmed he had cancer. So I went back inside to confront him for lying to me. Come back for part 2. This is part 2 of the story of me leaving my husband after I found out that he had cancer. So after I found the positive test results in his car that confirmed he had cancer, I went back inside to confront him for lying to me. I was sitting down waiting for him to get out of the shower. But then I kind of decided that I didn't want to confront him. Our marriage was already going downhill and I was already having thoughts about leaving him anyway. I mean, he did cheat on me with my close friend. I know this might make me sound like a terrible person, but I didn't want to be there for him. I didn't want to be his main support system mentally or physically. And cancer is a lot to deal with. I didn't want to be in and out of the hospital, spending multiple days there, sleeping there, paying all of the bills myself. It would be too much for me. So I decided I was going to pack my things and leave without telling him when or why. And I mean, he didn't know that I knew he had cancer, so he wouldn't think that I was leaving him because of that. So I knew I needed to leave before he decided to tell me he had cancer, so it didn't look like I left him because of that. So the next day, he went to work, and then I went to work. As in packing all my stuff, and then I left. Afterwards, he kept begging me to come back, so I blocked him, and I haven't talked to him since.
Story time on how I slept with my brother. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. And I mean, we really gonna get straight to the point here. So I have a brother, he's 12 and I'm 18. And yes, he is my full biological brother. Me and my brother have always been really close ever since we were little. We did everything together. From bubble baths when we were young, to watching all our favorite shows and movies together, to even playing sports together. We were always just super close and inseparable. My mom and dad would leave us home alone while they were at work because they were way too cheap to get a babysitter. And I eventually got to an age where I could look after both me and my brother. Years of constant alone time and good vibes led us to one day watching a Netflix movie and cuddling. A scene came on that was a bit risque and it kind of just set the mood. Me and my brother looked at each other and we just started kissing. And eventually right there on the couch we did the nasty. Like and follow for part 2. Part 2 on how I slept with my brother. Okay, so boom, like I said, after watching Netflix and cuddling, me and my brother looked in each other's eyes and then we started kissing. And then that led to us doing the nasty right on the couch. And yes, this is my biological brother. Ever since that day, whenever we're home alone, we continue to sleep with each other and have great times and memories. One day, my mom came home early and seen us on the couch kissing. She ran over to us, separated us, and started screaming. She told our dad and we got in big trouble. They talked to us about how this is inappropriate and how brothers and sisters aren't supposed to be intimate, but they don't know that we went all the way. They placed cameras all over the house and now me and my brother never have a chance to be with each other. I know it's wrong, but they won't stop us. We'll find another way to be together because we're in love. Wish me luck, guys. Story time on how I found out my best friend was sleeping with my boyfriend while on the phone with me. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So I was in what I later realized was a very bad relationship. But at the time, this dude was like a religion to me. I was crazy about him. My best friend at the time, sort of a mean girl, but I wasn't very good at making friends, so I put up with her being cruel to people. She would never do anything to hurt me, right? Anyways, that relationship started getting abusive, but I kept with it because, I was young and stupid. I convinced myself that if I tried a little harder, everything would just fix itself. It didn't, and after a few months, we broke up. Sometime later, I was at a party and my best friend was a bit drunk. And that's when she told me, while laughing the entire time, how she and my ex were sleeping with each other literally 2 weeks after we started dating. And it gets worse. Like and follow for part 2. Part 2 on how I found out my best friend was sleeping with my boyfriend while on the phone with me. Okay, so boom, like I said, my relationship with my boyfriend became abusive, so we broke up. Fast forward a couple weeks and I was at a party with my best friend and she was a bit drunk. She told me while laughing the entire time how she and my ex were sleeping with each other literally 2 weeks after I started dating him. Then she goes in details about how they would do the nasty while he was talking to me on the phone. Mind you, she's laughing while saying this. She went into detail on all the ways and places they used to sneak around to sleep with each other. And this was the girl I would cry to when my ex would abuse me. She didn't seem to have any idea that what she was saying was literally messed up. She actually thought that I would find it funny too. Safe to say that that friendship ended. Be careful for fake friends out there, y'all. Story time on how I caught my dad sleeping with my sister, his biological daughter. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So my mom passed away when I was 10 years old. Me, my dad, and sister grieved the loss of our mom/wife and honored her as best as we could. But the loss of our mom hit our dad pretty rough. Due to the loss, for about 4 years, he continued to suffer from depression. But recently, my dad has been happy. The happiest I've seen him in a long time. And it kind of came out of nowhere, but of course I was happy for my dad. I'm now 14 and my sister is 12, and everyone always says how much my little sister looks like my mom. Literally my mom's twin and mini-me. I thought nothing of it, but little did I know my sister looking like my mom would make my dad do some disgusting things. Like and follow for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my dad sleeping with my sister, his biological daughter. Okay, so boom, like I said, after my mom passed away, my dad became depressed until a couple years later he just wasn't. Watch part 1 to understand. Now I'm 14 and my sister's 12 and everyone is saying my sister looks like my mom. Literally twins.
It's just getting ridiculous.
She is the mini-me of my mom. And I guess my dad seen this too and he became obsessed with my little sister. He would dress my little sister up as my mom and even became way too affectionate with her. For some reason, my little sister liked this attention, but I knew it was wrong. But I didn't know how far my dad would take it. One day I was in my room and I heard moaning and it sounded like my sister. And it was coming from my dad's room. So I go over there. And yeah, it's exactly what y'all think. I called and told my auntie and now my dad's in jail. We're living with our auntie and my sister's in counseling. Be safe.
This is why you should be very careful who you talk to online. A 16-year-old girl was home with her mom when she got a disturbing text message from a boy she had recently met on Snapchat. He told her he was right outside of her house, but when she went to look, no one was there. Frightened, she decides to sleep in her mom's room that night, and right before she goes to bed, she gets another text from the boy that just says, "I'm in your house." She shows her mom, who immediately searches the whole house, checks every door, turns on every light. There's no one there. So even though they're creeped out, they go back to bed. The next morning, she gets up and she goes back to her bedroom and immediately feels like she's being watched. She checks in her closet, looks behind her door, there's no one there. Then she noticed that the shoe boxes she normally kept perfectly arranged next to her bed had been moved. So she crouches down to put them back in order, and then out of the corner of her eye, she notices something. The boy who was texting her was under her bed.